Welcome to Beardy, Bruce Lee Central.
You know what that was?
What?
The triads got him.
Do you think so? You really do?
You know those people? They're Sicilian, dog. Listen, you know what? I'm gonna kill you and your son.
Really?
And they did it.
That's what it is? 'Cause I'd heard that he died, that Bruce Lee died from some sort of an allergic reaction to a drug or...
Hey everybody, it's Birdie here. What's going on, guys? Okay, so good old Chuck Norris. We all know him, we all love him. But I have a feeling you're not going to agree with him on this one, okay? So good old Chuck has a bizarre theory concerning Bruce Lee's death. So let's take a listen to what Chuck Norris has to say about Bruce Lee and Bruce Lee's death.
I look down and I see Bruce Lee sitting down. I said, oh wow, you know, and because I'd never met him. I'd seen him, you know, doing his stuff. And anyway, we kind of nodded at each other, and then I fought and won the championship. And Bruce Lee goes like this here. So I go down there and get off, you know, and we start talking. And he says, don't you live in LA? I says, yes. He says, I do too. So why don't we start training together? I said, okay. So Bruce and I worked out for 2 years together. He taught me a lot of his Chinese techniques, and I showed him a lot of our techniques of kicks and all the stuff here. He believed in only kicking below the waist. And I said, well, that's good, Bruce. He said, you should be able to kick anywhere. You should be able to put that foot anywhere. And so, you know, so we trained together for 2 years, and he got, as you could tell, he got really good at it. And anyway, and then finally he gives me a call, and he says, I'm leaving for Hong Kong to do a movie. And I said, oh, that's great. Well, good luck. So I don't hear from Bruce for 2 years. And then out of the blue, he gives me a call. He says, I've done 2 movies in Hong Kong, and they're really successful. He says, I want to do a movie now with a fight scene that's never been done before, and I want you to be my opponent. I go, and I've never done anything like that. I said, oh, you know why? Because I'm the world champion? Is that And I said, so I said, well, who wins, Bruce? He said, kidding. He said, I'm going to win. I'm the champ. I'm the winner. I'm the star. I said, oh, okay. So anyway, Bruce and I, you know, did this big fight scene in Rome, and it was really, you know, because Bruce and I worked out for 2 years together, so we knew each other very, very well. I knew everything that he wants to do, and he knows everything that I like to do. And so when we did the fight scene, we pretty much just put it together right there. And anyway, we did the fight scene, and after it was over, you know, I went back home, and then in 1972, I get a call. Bruce is coming to LA to see his doctor. And he says, so he says, let's have lunch. So we do. We have lunch. And he says, I'm going to see the doctor, and because I've got some problems. I'm getting dizzy and passing out. So I want to find out what it is. So anyway, so he goes to the doctor and does the whole thing. Anyway, after he does, we get back together, and I said, how'd it go? And he says, well, the doctor says, you know, he's 32, he's the same age as me. We were both 32. And he says, the doctor says, I'm like an 18-year-old kid, you know. I said, oh, that's great. And I said, did he tell you why you're falling and doing all the falling and all that stuff? He says, he doesn't know. He says, you know, it could just be anything. So anyway, he leaves for Hong Kong. And a few months later, he passes away. And I was shocked. Anyway, when they went to Seattle, you know, just laying there, and we all went up. Me and a lot of our friends that Bruce's went up there for the when he died. And Linda, his wife, decided to move back to California, and he found a home about maybe a half a block from my house, so I could spend time with Brandon, the boy. And I did. I spent a lot of time with him, you know, telling him about his dad and you know, all this stuff here. And then, of course, he became a champion, star himself. And then, unfortunately, he wound up passing away. But the thing is that Bruce was an incredible guy, and this is, you know, and this time I spent with him, going through this whole thing here, was something that I will never forget about. And so this is about Bruce Lee.
When I was having dinner with Chuck, I did ask him, I said, if you and Bruce were in a real fight to the death, who would win? And he said, without thinking, he said, Bruce, of course. Right. Nobody could beat him.
Okay, so the voice you just heard was the voice of John Ben, the boss from Way of the Dragon. Now, this was a secret recording. He wasn't aware that he was being recorded. So he sat down with Chuck Norris and he asked Chuck Norris, who would win in a real fight between you and Bruce Lee? And Chuck said that Bruce Lee would win that fight. Now, if you ask Chuck Norris today, he would never, ever admit that Bruce Lee would beat him in a fight. Chuck has done hundreds of interviews and he never, ever, ever admits that Bruce Lee would beat him in a real fight. Why? Well, I just don't know. I just don't know. So John Ben and I talked together actually years ago. We had a phone call and I just wanted to get his impressions of Bruce Lee. And he told me that he used to vacation with Bruce Lee. And all of the time that they would hang out together, Bruce Lee would talk about martial arts, and it was only martial arts. He was only thinking about training, exercise, and martial arts. And he also said that Bruce Lee was the fastest and strongest guy he had ever seen. Now, John Ben is 6'4". He's a huge guy, a big guy, and Bruce Lee would push him around like he was nothing. And you even saw that in the movie Way of the Dragon.
I met Bruce Lee in 1968 when I won the World Championship in New York City at Madison Square Garden. And we were walking together to the hotel and talking about our philosophies and everything. And as we're going up the elevator, it goes to my floor. I get out, well, Bruce steps out with me. And the next thing you know, we're in the hallway working out. Now, this is at midnight. And we worked out till 4 o'clock that morning. And Bruce had a 7 o'clock flight to Los Angeles, so he said, I got to go get ready and leave. And so anyway, he said, let's work out together when we both get back to Los Angeles, which we did. So he lived in Culver City, and he had a big workout area in his backyard. And so we started training in his backyard for like 2 years. And Bruce had different philosophies at that time than I did. And he said, I believe in only kicking below the waist. I believe you shouldn't go any higher than the waist. And I said, well, that's good and it's bad, Bruce. You should be able to have the ability to kick anywhere. And that way, if you only want to go low, that's fine. But if there's an opening high, then you should be able to take advantage of it. And that's what we did. I started showing Bruce different high kicks, spinning heel kicks, and jumping, spinning round kicks and stuff like this here. And I said, look, Bruce, that's great. Kick somebody in the groin. But why not kick him up in the face too? Why not? Why not do the same thing? And so anyway, he started showing me the sticky hands, which are close-in type fighting, which was really great to learn. And then I started showing him all the various high kicks, and he really fell in love with them. And he became so good after about 6 months, he could do them just about as well as I could. And then, like I say, Bruce left for Hong Kong soon after to pursue his movie career. And I didn't hear from him for like 2 years. Then out of the blue, he calls me. He says, Chuck, I've done 2 movies, and they're really successful in Hong Kong. He said, I want to do a movie now with a fight scene that everyone will remember. and I want to do the fight scene in the Colosseum in Rome, and I want you to be my opponent. And kiddingly, I say, well, Bruce, who wins this fight? And he says, I win. I'm the star of this movie. And at that time, I held the world title. And I said, oh, I see. You want to beat the world champion, huh? He says, no, 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 no. He said, I want to kill the world champion. So anyway, I thought, well, it'd break up the monotony from teaching all the time. So I went to Rome and did the movie with him. And he said, look, I'm not going to make you out to be a bad guy. He said, I will kill you, but when I lay you down, I'm going to put your uniform, karate uniform on you, and put your belt across. So that way it looks like two gladiators combating each other. Bruce came to New York when I fought for the world title at Madison Square Garden in 1968. And we decided to start working out together in Los Angeles, which we did for over 2 years. And then he left for Hong Kong to pursue his movie career. And I didn't hear from him for like 2 years. And then out of the blue, he calls me. He says, Chuck, I've done 2 movies in Hong Kong, and they're very successful. I want to do a movie now with a fight scene that everyone will remember. And I want to do it in the Colosseum in Rome, like 2 gladiators fighting. And I want you to be my opponent. So kiddingly, I asked Bruce, well, who wins, Bruce? He says, I win. I'm the star of this movie, so, which I knew he was going to say. And I said, yeah, I see. You want to beat the world champion, because I held the world title at the time. He says, no, I want to kill the world champion. So anyway, I decided to go to Rome and do the movie with Bruce, and of course he killed me, but he said, I don't want to make you out to be a bad guy. When I kill you, I'm going to put your uniform across your chest and put your belt there. So it's like 2 gladiators fighting each other.
One of the great movies that people still remember is your movie with Bruce Lee, Return of the Dragon. It had that amazing fight scene.
Yeah, right. Still a classic today.
Still a classic. Just tell us what, just off the top of your head, comes to mind when we talk about that fight scene with you and Bruce Lee.
Well, the whole thing is Bruce was a tremendous martial artist, and when we did the fight in the Colosseum in Rome, he just said, well, what do you want to do? I said, well, I'll do these techniques, you know. And he said, okay, I'll do those. So it's it was kind of an ad-lib type of a fight. But I think what made the fight so spectacular, it wasn't so much just all the karate that we do most of the time in pictures, but it was the interrelationship. I was fighting for the world title, and that's when Bruce was doing the Green Hornet series, and he came back there as a celebrity guest. And after I won the title, the promoter introduced me to Bruce. And so we started talking about our philosophies in the martial arts and so forth. And anyway, we were both staying at the same hotel, the Americana in New York, and we started walking over to the hotel. As we got going up the elevator, I remember Bruce was staying on the 7th floor and I was on the 9th. As we got to his floor, we were really getting pretty involved into our conversation. So instead of me going up, I stepped out in the hallway with him. And this is like 11:30 at night. And we started working out in the hallway. And next time I looked at my watch, it was 7 o'clock the next morning. And it was amazing because the guy he had so much knowledge and, as you know on the screen, ability, that it seemed like an hour had gone by as far as us working out and exchanging ideas. So he said, well, when we get back to Los Angeles, why don't we start working out together, which we did. When I got back, we started training together, and then the series was canceled, and he went to Hong Kong to pursue a movie career. When he went to Hong Kong, his first movie, the biggest grossing movie in Asia, before Bruce went over there, was The Sound of Music. It had grossed $2.4 million, which again was the biggest movie ever grossed in the Orient. Bruce did the first movie called The Big Boss, which over here was The Fist of Fury, and that one grossed $3.2 million, which is $800,000 more than The Sound of Music. Then he did The Fist of Fury, which over here was called The Chinese Connection, and that one grossed $4.3 million. And then he called me up and he said he'd like to do a movie with a real good fight scene in the movie. I said, well, the only way we can have a fight scene is if I get to hit you once in a while. And he said, well, yeah, naturally, we'd make it a back and forth type fight. So anyway, that fight scene that you saw took us 5 days to do, and in Asia alone, the movie grossed over $11 million. It's the biggest grossing movie in the history of Asia, and they don't think anything will surpass it for a long time. Then Bruce naturally did Enter the Dragon, which was his last movie, and it was probably the biggest grossing movie as far as martial art movies go. But Bruce was, was 32 years old. Let me explain something about his death too, because there's, I guess, so many, rumors that are going about how he passed away and so forth, about touch of death and drugs and so forth. And so I'd like to clarify that before we go on with the demonstration. Is Bruce in 1968? Well, he's pretty heavy in the weightlifting, as you could tell. He was very well built. And he was lifting weights one night with 𝘽𝙧𝙪𝙘𝙧𝙪, who was a student of his when he was in Los Angeles, playing at UCLA. And he tried to lift too heavy weights, and he ruptured the disc in his back, and he was laid up in the hospital for 3 weeks. In fact, the doctors said that they didn't know if he'd be able to walk again or not. But of course, with a person like Bruce, who's got the drive and determination to achieve anything in life, he was up in about a month, and within 3 months, he was as strong as he ever was. But he had constant back pains from that day on, and he was having to take medication to keep the muscles in the back loose and relaxed. So what happened is that when he was in Hong Kong preparing for his next movie, he was working with a girl named Betty, and who was going to co-star with him, and he got a severe headache. So Betty gave him some antibiotics for the headache, and with the medication he had taken for his back and the medication he had taken for his headache, they reacted to each other and made his brain swell up, and it created an aneurysm or ruptured blood cells in his brain, and that's actually what happened. So if anyone asks you what happened, you can tell them the true story.